Today, we are going to unpack one of the most radical and, let's be honest, controversial national transformations happening anywhere in the world right now. We're talking about El Salvador. For years, El Salvador had this grim reputation as literally the most dangerous country on the planet. But today, it's being sold as a paradise for surfers and tech bros. And look, this isn't just some slick PR campaign. It's a reflection of a deep, almost unbelievable change in what it's like to live there day to day.
So the big question is, how did this happen? I mean, how does a nation go from being ruled by fear to being a hot new tourist spot? Let's get into it. Well, the answer really revolves around one guy, President Nayib Bukele. His rise didn't just change the government. It completely blew up the old political system and brought in a radical and, deeply controversial way of running a country.
You see, Bukele didn't just win an election. He systematically took apart all the checks and balances on his power, and he did it with incredible speed. In 2021, his party, Nuevas Ideas, won a supermajority. And what was their very first move? They fired the top judges on the Supreme Court and put in their own people. Just a few months after that, the new court reinterpreted the Constitution to let him run for re-election, something that was totally illegal before. And the result? A complete landslide victory in 2024. And just to make sure his grip on power was locked in, his administration literally rewrote the rules of the game. They slashed the number of seats in the legislature, they merged hundreds of local towns into just a handful, and they changed the way votes are counted to a formula that pretty much guarantees the biggest party wins big. The outcome was another supermajority, giving him almost total control over every single part of the government. Okay, so with all that political power secured, Bukele went after the one thing that got him elected in the first place, wiping out the gangs that had been terrorizing the country for decades. And his weapon of choice was something called the state of exception. To really get why so many people supported his harsh methods, you have to understand what 2015 was like. The murder rate was over 100 for every 100,000 people. I mean, that's a level of violence you'd expect to see in a war zone. Gangs ran entire neighborhoods, they extorted pretty much every business, and they killed people without any fear of consequences. Now, fast forward to 2024. The government is projecting a homicide rate of just 1.8. That is an absolutely staggering drop of over 98%. They now have entire months with zero murders. From a purely statistical standpoint, it is a massive, undeniable success. But, and this is a huge but, this piece has come at an incredible cost. On one hand, yes, the streets are safe, the extortion rackets are gone, people can actually walk around freely in places that used to be no-go zones. But on the other hand, over 83,000 people have been arrested, basic legal rights have been thrown out the window, and mass trials are the new normal. Let's be really clear about what was lost here. The state of exception put key constitutional rights on pause. So imagine this. Police can break up any group of people they want. You can be arrested and held for weeks without ever seeing a lawyer. And your private messages can be read without a warrant. That became the new reality. And maybe the most powerful symbol of this whole era is the CCOT, the Center for the Confinement of Terrorism. It's a massive mega prison built to hold 40,000 inmates, and it's designed to completely seal off gang members from the rest of the world. It's a giant, concrete reminder of the trade-offs being made for the sake of security. But cleaning up the streets was really only part one of the plan. The next phase of Bukele's project was to completely change how the world saw El Salvador, to rebrand it as this cool, modern place for tech, tourism, and a new kind of national pride. The first really big, flashy bet was Bitcoin. In a move that made the whole global financial world's jaw drop, El Salvador became the first country ever to make it legal tender. And this wasn't just, an option. The law said every single business, from the guy selling snacks on the street to major corporations, had to accept Bitcoin as payment. So how did that wild experiment go? Well, the numbers tell a pretty clear story. It failed. Widespread adoption just never happened. A big reason was Bitcoin's price swings. And frankly, it was just too complicated for the average person to use. By 2024, a tiny fraction of people were using it for anything, and less than 2% of the all-important money sent home from abroad was coming through crypto. The policy officially changed when reality and the International Monetary Fund came knocking. El Salvador needed a huge loan, about $1.4 billion from the IMF, so the government quietly passed a new rule. Businesses no longer had to accept Bitcoin. It was no longer being forced on the economy. But here's the thing. Where one high-tech gamble failed, a much more traditional one paid off big time. The Surf City strategy took one of the country's best natural resources, its amazing Pacific Coast waves, and ran with it. They invested in the coastal towns, started hosting huge pro-surfing competitions, and the whole rebrand has been a massive success. Tourism is booming, and it's now a real engine for the economy. So this brings us right back to the central dilemma. El Salvador is a country that has been profoundly transformed, no doubt about it. But that transformation came with a very, very steep price, a price paid in basic civil rights and democratic principles. Someone summed it up perfectly, saying, El Salvador has become a nation that has traded the chaotic liberty of a fragile democracy for the orderly security of an authoritarian state. And for millions of Salvadorans who were just exhausted after decades of violence, it was a trade they were more than willing to make. So is the Salvadoran miracle some new, effective playbook for other struggling countries to copy, or is it a chilling cautionary tale about how easily democratic freedoms can be given up for the promise of safety? That's the question El Salvador is now asking the world, and the answer is going to have ripple effects far beyond its own borders.